The recent market volatility in China has put a question mark in the minds of investors around the world. Is this just a temporary dip, or could the Chinese economy suffer the fate of Japan that had 2 decades of economic pain after a market bubble burst?
The world hardly saw it coming. China emerged from abject poverty, and a few years ago it became the second largest economy in the world, with a massive and a growing middle class. Now, even while other countries were pummeled after the financial crisis, there have been amazing, spectacular growth rates in China. The problem is the rate of growth is slowing down. The population is becoming older, and there's a concern that China can no longer rely on cheap young labor and export. So it's looking at ways to stimulate internal consumption. The state-owned enterprises dominate this economy, and they've driven growth. But there's a realization now that with a lack of competition, many of them are not competitive enough. The state is in fact moving out of various sectors, and some of these more efficient SOEs have been listed on various stock exchanges, and they are run like private companies. But then we saw a while ago the Chinese government intervened vigorously when the stock started falling. So we realized that actually the normal rules of demand and supply don't apply. There are also concerns about debt, and local governments were particularly hard hit when the housing bubble burst. The governments own the land and they were using it to raise debt. Now, today I spoke to business people in China. I asked them how they're feeling about their economy, and I can tell you they're still optimistic as ever.
The economy is in its process to be bigger, so fluctuations should very well may happen in the economy, the scale of economy to go bigger. So China is quite, the perspective of Chinese economy is quite good, it's quite positive.
I think the Chinese people feel pretty good about it. There are crashes and there are downturns from time to time. And for the educated and for the people who understand this, they know these are the necessary ups and downs of the market. But I would agree with you if some of the people may be scared by this. But I think that the Chinese government have an upper hand on controlling the economy.
我们作为一个民营企业，三一重工是一个民营企业。
Yes, as we see recently that if we look at the Chinese stock market, it looks there's still some fluctuations, and that also accumulated some certain the kind of frightens in the normal stakeholders. They all worry about the Chinese economy. But if you really look into recently our Chinese government's efforts, and also with our normal people and the stakeholders, they're all cooperating, and we can see that stock market is coming back better and better.
This is an authoritarian country in relation to South Africa. It's not often that you'll find Chinese people on the streets who will talk about losing money on the stock markets, who will be negative. But we know a lot of individual investors have suffered. Overall, those in business, those who say they're in the know, believe that this economy will, maybe it's going through a hiccup, but it will continue to boom. Francis Hurd, SABC News, Beijing.